Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to the show, episode 444. That's like three numbers right in a row. You don't see that often. Since episode 333, I guess. It's been a long time. We're talking Ukraine's long bombs and Israel-Iran shakeup. My name is Scott. This is the Council on Future Conflicts, and today we've got a hell of a show for you. And of course, I'm joined by my good friends Joe Dolio and Watcher. Thank you guys for being here. Joe, how you doing today, brother?
I'm not bad, but I just want to warn everybody: the best minute half of the show has already happened. It's all downhill from here. So
I don't know. I disagree. I think the chat would disagree.
I appreciate that, Joe.
I don't know. The music's pretty solid, and the video clips are pretty solid. I don't know.
It's all the bloviating we do afterwards that brings it down, right?
Right. But in all honesty, coming back from a class, we had a great group of guys who came out and had a great time learning a little bit about community security ops. We got out, did some roadblocks and checkpoints. We got out in the woods and did some patrolling, and might even have had them trip a booby trap or two. So it was a good time. Good time.
Very good. Anybody we know in the showed up, or is it mostly new folks?
Oh no, absolutely. There were a lot of show fans. Our boys from Tri-State Industries in Dubuque, Iowa, were there. And if I was sitting in front of a camera, I would wear the shirt they gave me. But we've got a lot of great fans that were out there. Just good folks, all having a good time. Some guys have been in class before, some guys who are new, and a lot of show fans. So it's a really good time.
That's awesome. It's just great seeing the fans of the show getting out and meeting up in the real world. I mean, I feel like one of the things that you, Joe, have been the kind of driving force behind this, but I think we've all been advocates for it, is getting out there and meeting people and creating that community. In order to have a community to defend, you've got to create it. And while we may not all be neighbors, it's good to get out there and actually meet the people that you're interacting with in areas like this.
One point that I made strongly on Sunday's lecture is you can't build a safe house network, which we may need in the near future, without meeting each other face to face. It's vitally important.
Yeah.
And we all had a great time doing that, breaking bread together, getting out. And you know what? The host did a great job cooking and making everyone feel at home. When a group of strangers sit down and share a meal together, by the end of that meal, they're not strangers anymore. And I think that's an important piece of human history we need to really dive into. Getting together, having a meal together, or sitting around a campfire telling stories together, really building that fellowship. So it's vitally important.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And even if it ends up being something, I don't know, just kind of social, right? That's okay. It doesn't have to be, some sort of strict fellowship. Anytime people get together and, for a common purpose, I think that's a good thing. And I'll be honest with you, all the meetups I've seen that have been associated with people who've been on this show, been top level kind of thing. So I'm glad you guys were able to make that use. Yes. Okay. So hold us real quick. The chat has noticed. Uncle Bosby says, Scott, use the correct microphone. Well, if you notice, I've got my little boom mic out instead of my normal mic. And that is because literally right before the show, we were going to start literally dead bang on time. And then my microphone dies and then I started up again and it died again. So I'm going to have to, troubleshoot that, but I can't do it during the show. So I'm working off of the old headphone boom mic. So bear with me.
It's always amazing when everyone is concerned about the production quality of the free show. But anyway, I wanted to point out that another valuable lesson was learned by Doug, who's been at several classes now, is that if you leave your really expensive bottle of scotch behind, I will take it. So, Doug, if you're looking for the Glenfiddich, it's in the back of my car.
All right, Watcher, you're still out in the boonies. How you doing? Maybe he's not doing so good. Maybe one of the cows got him.
I'm
There he is.
muting myself with various different things, and it turns out you have to undo both of them. Real quick, before we move on from a beautiful opportunity, Joe, stealing someone's whiskey and then leaving, I believe there's a term for that. I think it's an Irish goodbye. But yeah, doing great. It's raining yet again, but not hard enough. You can hear it in the little tin shack that I'm currently broadcasting from parts undisclosed. I have realized, Scott, that very recently, legitimately, I realized that given the tasks that I'm performing and that I am being compensated for those tasks, I can now officially add cowboy to my long list of professions, and it's sitting pretty good with me as a kid who grew up in the West but was a city kid.
That's cool, man. I saw your little spicy tweet the other day when somebody was giving you shit about that, and I thought that was kind of, it's kind of funny.
I'm in my cowboy arc, as the fans have said.
Stormy reminds us that of a couple things.
That's pretty awesome. I would like to point out, though, it's not stealing; it is recovery of lost assets. For the record.
Stormy reminds us of a couple things here. This is a member chat. She's been a member for 26 months. She says, good morning, good Monday morning. Remember to hit that like button whenever you're watching and join the XDM group for loads of memes and chat. And have a great day. So one of the things that when you become a member of the channel over here on YouTube specifically, you get a free member chat, right? Just like this. And we treat it just like any $5 super chat. It doesn't go to the front of the line like a $10 ones do, but it absolutely gets read, and I appreciate it. The membership costs $5 a month, so you basically, you could say it's like the cost of one super chat, right? So appreciate Stormy and all the other people who are members of this channel. We appreciate you guys. All right, gentlemen. Anything else of lesser to hit up?
PRK brings it up right here for Joe.
Liquor
gear and or liquor adrift is a gift. That's the laws of the universe.
That's right, Joe. That's why I don't think you did anything wrong. You just
absolutely all that I did was secure unsecured assets. That's all.
There you go.
I'm pretty sure there's a salvage law as well. Anyways, it's covered. It's covered.
Yes. All right. Anything else going on in the world we need to talk about before we jump into our odds and ends, gentlemen? Nothing heard. Nothing heard. Let's jump into the first one then, guys. Joe, we've talked about this. Actually, we talked about this last week, but evidently it's a thing now. It's a real thing. The end of democracy in Germany. The vote to ban the AfD party will occur before the German snap elections. Now, if you were paying attention to the show last week, we reported on the basically the collapse of the Schultz government in Germany. People are just tired of it. And the second largest party in Germany is now they're trying to basically kick them to the curb and deny democracy from millions of German citizens.
It's not like this has ever happened in Germany before and had a bad outcome.
Exactly right. And the irony is that they're pointing the Nazi finger at the AfD people and using that to do exactly what the Nazis did to, say, the Communist Party and some of the other parties in Germany. How ironic.
Well, the term Nazi has become absolutely worthless anymore, right? Because we
Yeah,
call everything a Nazi, therefore nothing is a Nazi except
right.
the Azov Battalion. They are
Yeah,
Nazis.
they are self-proclaimed Nazis, I think. Um, yeah.
Hey,
Uh,
speaking of, I didn't see the notes, but are the clowns who appeared in Ohio yesterday in the odds and ends somewhere?
no, not really, because I feel like it's just a, it's an information operation. It's not even a real
Well,
thing.
yeah. Let me just point it out then, so we can move on, guys. Those are not real. Those are literally a leftist agitation group meant to justify whatever action the left is about to take. So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I'm not gonna say there's not a zero. There is a greater than zero chance that those are actual real Nazis. That being said, um, they're probably more likely to be exactly what Joe just said, which is, neo-Marxists cosplaying as their favorite conservative meme. Um, very
Wait, before we move on, I can prove it. It's definitive too. I don't know how nobody else sees this. See them legs? See them chicken scratch falling out?
You mean the skinny pants?
Yeah, that definitely not a leftist. No way.
Anyway, so let's see. Let's jump into this because let's be honest. I mean, we're gonna have to deal with Europe over the next 4 years, and so it's important for us to know who they are. Motion to ban the Alternative for Germany party, signed by 112 MPs, has been handed to the Bundestag president of the far left Social Democrats, according to reports in the German state media. Uh, in the motion, if the motion passes, the Bundestag will initial proceedings that would help to top the court of Germany, the constitutional court, to determine whether the AfD can be banned. There are 733 seats in the Bundestag. The motion only needs a simple majority to pass. The AfD is the second most popular party in the country and is increasingly so popular that it's making it very difficult for those ruling parties to form coalitions without it. As it grows, the establishment parties are rallying together to remove this rival from the democratic process. Many of the top proponents of the ban, such as the CDU's Marco Wanderwitz, who lost his local election to an AfD politician. I wonder why he's all pissed off. Operate under the model that they are saving democracy. Yeah, you get voted out of office and you're saving democracy. Got it.
That's very similar to wanting to have Joe Biden step down and install Kamala Harris as president, despite the vote not to, because they want to save democracy.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'll believe anything at this point. After what we've seen, the MPs who backed the motion come from a variety of different party factions. The parliamentary leader of the Greens said that 50 members of the Greens signed on to the motion to ban the party. Most German establishment is working towards a ban, but there's disagreement about the pace and timing of such a ban. Some are also worried that the ban will backfire and make the AfD more popular than ever, it's exactly what will happen. For one, a ban could take years, and second, the top country's court may reject the ban, which would be catastrophic outcome for the German establishment. Yeah, because the AfD would then be so damn popular that they would potentially take the top spot. It should be noticed that the country's top court usually issues rulings friendly to the establishment. Well, I think that's probably true too. And some of the
I
Green
think that
MPs are against the ban. Go ahead, Joe.
I think that see, there's that thing we just talked about, by the way.
Yep.
I think that the example of the Amish and Mennonites in America could apply here. They were content to leave American politics well enough alone until American politics decided to attempt to suppress them. And they came out in a massive way with a huge backlash against the establishment. I think that that's something Germany should pay attention to and understand they might be playing with fire here, just like that article said. It could create such a monster and a backlash that they can't come back from it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, right, Joe? Is that I'm sure there is some number of these politicians are absolutely just greedy, right? But there is, on the other hand, there are some that are just, they're legitimately worried and they have good intentions, right? But ultimately, the path to hell is paved with good intentions, and I think, like you just said, they're going to create a monster in doing so. Yeah, let me just look at the story here. Go finish it up. Wonderwit's CDU, however, wants an AFD ban now, stating it has to happen quickly due to the upcoming elections. Oh, well, I mean, heaven forbid we allow them to take part in the duly run elections. One key legal plank of any potential ban of AFD's designation from the Office of Protection and the Constitution, which is currently led by Thomas Haldenwang, is expected that the BFD would reclassify AFD this year with the more damaging designation of confirmed threat to the Constitution. And they would actually outlaw the membership of the party. So, not only would you not be able to vote for them, but then it's almost like a RICO kind of thing where it's illegal to become a member of the party.
This is the world drifting toward authoritarianism. The first person to talk about having to take these kinds of actions to protect democracy was Lenin, and it's important to know that, right? We always use lofty sounding phrases when we institute absolutism and absolute authoritarianism.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The sad thing is, Joe, is that, just give them half a chance, they would do the exact same thing here in America. Unfortunately, the democratic process has worked in our favor this go around. Though they are literally trying to, they're like, whoops, we forgot to do the steal. Let's do it retroactively. And so they're already working to count illegal votes in Pennsylvania. So,
Let me just say again that he's not in the chair yet. So
that's right. That's right. And we've said, and this is exactly what we've said.
they're still trying to air quote save our democracy. Go ahead, Watcher.
Yeah. In that thread, they are assembling a shadow government. They are essentially stating, I don't know if you've seen the articles circulating, but it's every leftist fantasy of playing the resistance in France, and they're planning all of it out in the open as well. So listen, guys, this is going to get ugly. Although they've already kind of guaranteed that they lose, it doesn't mean they can't make it very painful and very costly for all involved.
Yeah. All right. That's enough German politics. I can only take so much German politics. It's so, I hate to say it, Joe. I mean, like, as frustrating as American politics are, and I get really frustrated, I feel like we're in a way better situation, even with the state of our politics, than a lot of the places of the world.
Oh, can I back you up on that in a very weird way? I won't say who, but there is an individual who comes and works out here occasionally who's immigrated from Germany directly. And that's exactly why he immigrated from Germany to America directly, is that he was an AFD voter and had been working for years and years to try and make it work, and decided, nope, Germany's too far gone. They're never going to make it. The U.S. is the only chance for freedom.
Yeah.
So
right. Yeah, I agree with that. I think America's things like the Second Amendment I mean, they literally only exist in America, and so I don't know. I mean, I try to be hopeful, but at the same time, like it's kind of like I got to keep one foot on each side, right? One foot is hopeful, and the other side is pessimistic. So probably keeps me balanced. All right. Let's jump in. So, gentlemen, we talked about this last week a little bit too. Violent Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua, resurfaces in Tennessee. And Tennessee was one of the places we mentioned last week, in addition to, I think it was Colorado, and then also in, I think, Illinois and California and a couple other places. But Tennessee, evidently, all four of the major cities in Tennessee, they found them. Notorious Venezuelan gang TDA has taken root in Tennessee's major cities. Why? What do you think about Tennessee that causes them to what? If I'm a gang, I don't know that Tennessee is the first place that I would go.
Well, I don't know how they can say they resurfaced. Did they ever go away?
No, they never went away. That's right. That's right. Maybe they got whack-a-mole out of Colorado and they jumped on 40 and went east and just stopped when the gas ran out in Tennessee.
Well,
oh no,
I know for a fact that they have a.
Go ahead, Joe.
I'm pretty sure they have a presence in Bozeman, Montana. So I don't think they really went anywhere.
Oof.
Let's see. The gang is bringing its brutal brand of crime and violence to the volunteer state. TBI Director David Roush warned this week that during a budget hearing with Governor Bill Lee, according to Roush, the violent gang is known for its brazen disregard for law enforcement, has returned to Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, and Chattanooga, Tennessee's four largest cities, after being detected 2 years ago during a human trafficking bust. We uncovered a group here in human trafficking operation, and in that operation, we recognized a number of the members were trafficking females that they had abducted from Venezuela and brought here. Wow, it's almost as if a lot of these females coming across the border are being human trafficked. Shocking. That's shocking, gentlemen. I don't know what to say. It's almost like we had a politician who ran.
I don't believe it.
I know, it's far-fetched.
I don't.
With the initial arrests scattered, some members of the gang, Roush said they are now back and expanding their operations. Now we're starting to see that they're back. They're running human trafficking operations. That's where they start. According to Roush, TD has a pattern of establishing themselves through human traffic and then moving into organized retail theft, which is something, Joe, you've made us very aware of, and then eventually drug trafficking, which often leads to bloody turf wars with other criminal organizations, including drug cartels. They have a pathway of violence, and we want people to be aware of that. They will battle for the drug trafficking in communities. The gang's reputation for extreme violence sets it apart, with its members showing little fear of taking on law enforcement. They are very violent towards policing, have no respect for law enforcement. Joe, I mean, clearly that's one of those kind of things, right? Is that even gang members tend to avoid shootouts with the cops. But if you could actually find a gang who wanted to shoot it out with the cops, I don't know how deep the cops are. There's just not a lot. There's only so many on the ground, and there's only so many SWAT teams.
Well, I generally think, though, that Hispanic gangs in general are more willing to engage law enforcement and resist them than other gangs might be, and that's just an observation of fact, right? From all the various ones, they.
I lost you there, Joe.
Whereas,
Yeah, I got.
I know I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you now.
All right, so like African American street gangs are more at the sales end, where Hispanic gangs are at the distribution piece of the drug trade. So they've got more money to lose and more skin in the game than being at the retail end. So I guess that's they're moving bigger quantities at a time, which raises the risk level.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right.
Well, and
Let's
if I may, I
yeah,
kind
go
of
ahead,
learned
Watcher.
a fun, well, relatively, fact about why not just the riots, but like why so much retail theft started taking place at one time and why it was all specifically one uh, kind of person seen at those particular events. And, during the summer of 2020, they called it reparations and all kinds of other stuff. But it turns out that 2020 also happens to be the summer that the cartels pushed up into Southern California and various other places and took over distribution networks that were once the purview of multiple black gangs in the areas. And the black gangs had to find a way to continue to fund themselves and so turned to organized retail crime.
Well, and the organized retail crime is where Joe, I mean, you've kind of explained this in the past where it's not like the gang members that go in and do the actual thefts. Those are mostly the illegals that they bring over, that kind of low level. They just work for the gang. So is that that's a low threat kind of enterprise for these gangs, no? And Joe dropped out. All right. Yes. So that is a low threat. That was the kind of the whole point of that. Is that those types of crimes kind of insulate these gangs from their, I guess, victims. Let me kind of continue on with this story here. Governor Lee responded to Roush's warning by emphasizing the broader implications of gang activity linked to border security. There he is. Now he's back. Joe, did you hear any of what I was just saying there when you dropped out?
Yeah, I'm here. No.
Yeah, we got you. All right, I was just kind of going on with the story here. It says the border crisis is exactly what Americans voted to change. It's not political; it's about safety and security. Lee said in his post on X on November 15th. Tennessee will support Donald Trump as he secures our border while delivering key resources for the TBI to stop illegal criminals from operating in our state. Roush later released a statement urging Tennessee to stay vigilant. I mean, that's all well and good, right? But, this is one of those kind of things, Joe. I'm all for all these bold moves that Trump's making. I can't imagine anybody better for our point of view than Tom Homan to run the board, be the border czar. But that being said, that's all great, but now we need to see actual results, right? And getting gangs like this off the street. I'm not hearing anything. Watcher?
I think he might be going through an area with poor signal.
Okay, yeah, that's probably what it is. Watcher, any thoughts from you on this before we wrap this up?
Yeah, it's going to be a long road to fixing this, but it does sound like we have somebody who is personally dedicated and committed to making sure it is fixed, who's hopefully going to be assuming the position provided we make it through the next 70 days, although it does seem like that short circuits basically all of the globalist plans for our nation and multiple others that are depending on us to stay free. And so look for that to be opposed tooth and nail.
Oh, very cool. I mean, it's just, I think it's going to be one of those kind of things where, it's going to take some time before we see any movement,
I mean, that really depends. If Homan does make it in, I think the movement's going to be swift and it's going to be loud. Shock and awe might apply, although maybe I'm wrong.
Well, the interesting thing is I think in the states where in the states like Tennessee, for instance, Kentucky, some of these more kind of red-pilled states, I think the states will coordinate and so you'll have a lot of that manpower come from the states and the cities and whatnot. But ultimately, the problem will be these areas like Colorado, right, where they've got some sort of an infrastructure set up to protect, criminal aliens. Um, yeah, yeah, Dyadic is right. Holman doesn't have. There's no. You don't get. There is no position of border czar that's official, right? That's some of the. That is not an official cabinet position. That is a kind
Well,
of a.
look, I don't know how to tell you this, Diatica, but like 99% of the executive branch was not an official position until the executive decided, you know what, I'm making this a position. And do you know what it takes to make an executive position? Literally just an executive saying, hey, we're going to have this position. As long as there are powers that the executive can exercise, then they can delegate those powers to a cabinet position that they create. Like the entire cabinet head, all the secretary positions, all of that, they're spun out of whole cloth. There was no legislature created around that. The executive said, this is too much for one person to handle. I have to create a subordinate position that can manage this for me. And thus those cabinet positions were created.
Yeah. Joe, we got you back. Joe, can you hear me?
Uh-oh.
All right, he
Signal
may
must be
still
real
be
bad.
in. Yeah, he must be in a bad area still. Just hang in there, Joe. If you can hear us and we just can't hear you, just kind of keep piping up, and eventually when we hear you, we'll get you back in
We
the
will shut up
rotation.
immediately.
Exactly. As soon as we hear you, we will shut up immediately. That's
Will you though? But will you really?
there. We see. There you go. You just shut us up. Uh, any final thoughts, Joe, on this this whole kind of you know transnational gang that has taken root in Tennessee?
Well, I think that it's just a further sign that you are already in the collapse, and you're just going to see more of it.
Yeah, I think that's well said. You know, people keep looking for the black leather and Mad Max, face paint and mohawks and things like that to think that muscle cars, jacked up black muscle cars. But it doesn't look like that. The collapse arrives in a Prius. You know now. And
Wow, that's
the
actually quite
irony.
a good statement.
The collapse arrives in a Prius. The irony, Joe, is I was watching a video right before the show started. Speaking of, you're in the collapse, right? And this was video from China, right? It's a place that you don't think of as being in a collapse, right? But the just absolute rash of these public knife attacks where just somebody just loses a shit and just goes on a stabbing and hacking rampage until either the crowd puts him down or the police do. I mean, it's absolutely crazy.
I,
This kind of thing's happening in a lot of other places.
it's interesting that you wouldn't have viewed China as in a collapse. I get that nobody wants to trust what's his fuck Zahan or whatever it is, the Peter Zahan on China,
Uh-huh.
and I agree with that. However, they have an entire social movement among young people called the Lie Down and Let It Rot movement, which states we can't defeat communism directly, but what we can do is all just essentially let ourselves die and deprive the Communist Party of workers. And it has been doing massive damage. There are another spate of middle aged people who, for various reasons, were only allowed to have one child, and then that one child either dies or decides to hate them, who then become full of hate and decide they want to kill everybody else's one child. There are a ton of ridiculously terrible for society movements running through China that very easily could culminate. And I'm not saying topple the government or anything, but knock it back down several pegs on the world order. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to this next. You know, I yeah, this show, I when I was putting together the notes for the show, I tried to focus on like no politics, right? No politics, because we've been talking so much about that kind of stuff, and yeah, it's all very applicable to what we're doing here. But ultimately, I want to kind of try to focus on the conflict. But I feel like this is less politics and more like the future conflict. And it goes to this story here. Pentagon fails seventh audit in a row, aims for a clean audit in 2028. If they get to there, it'll be because of whoever it is that Trump puts in as the SecDef.
Well, there's a first time for everything, Scott.
That is correct. There is a first time for everything. And if old Pete Hegseth gets in there, I think he will probably clean some house. For the seventh year in a row, the Department of Defense has failed its annual finance statement audit, a massive undertaking meant to ensure accountability of $3.8 trillion worth of assets and $4 trillion in liabilities. This year's audit, like the six before it, exposed persistent challenges of the DoD's financial management systems. Of the 28 sub-audits conducted across the Pentagon entities that undergo standalone financial statements, only 9 received unmodified clean opinions. Another entry received a qualified opinion, while 15 entities were issued disclaimers. 3 audits opinions remain pending. He said, this is the SecDef said, there are several areas where we need to work harder on to achieve better results. Well, golly gee, yes, absolutely. You need to work harder to get better results. No shit.
Imagine a guy who is a board member at Raytheon saying, maybe we need to stop just throwing money at Raytheon. I don't know.
Well, if I may, I want to say something that one of you can't and the other won't. This is a face that inspires confidence, and I say that with full sarcasm. Wow. And if I may, if you guys have seen this, Joe Rogan recently learned about some interesting facts around the audit, and I can share that if you like.
Yeah.
All right, hold on. I just realized I didn't share with audio the first time because I didn't think there were any videos, and then I decided to add one mid-show. Boom. All right.
Always miss their audits.
Yes,
How many times they miss their audits? The Pentagon.
Yeah, the Pentagon.
How many times? I think it's crazy numbers too. Like whoopsies.
Oops. I just forgot about that $300 billion.
Article 2021 says they've never passed an audit.
Yeah, there we go. So it's rules. It's rules for thee, not for me. They've never passed an audit.
In the history of the Department of Defense, they have never passed an audit.
So, I'm not a big fan of the whole Black Rifle coffee thing, but that guy who was talking to is Evan Hafner. And, I've never been one to just hate somebody blindly. I always like to kind of have things that to like, pick at them.
Right.
And I found myself listening to that, ostensibly to be like, all right, what is this guy saying now, right? I mean, he's at least a veteran, so there might be some cool stories in there. But I listened to like the first 2 hours, and I had a hard time disagreeing with anything he said. I know there are things that I disagree with him on, but in his discussion with Joe Rogan for 2 hours at least, and I think that podcast is over 4 hours long. That's one of the reasons why I didn't make it through the whole thing. I found myself agreeing with almost everything he said, and it just reminds me that even though like there are people out there who am not a fan of, I don't like, and I have significant different disagreements with, even those people on our side of the aisle, I still agree probably like with 85% of the things that they say. And I could still respect respect the things that they've done in the past, but I just have a hard time respecting what they're doing now.
I'm curious.
I have a hard time with you assuming that Hafner is on your side of the aisle. But anyway,
Yeah.
That's a fair. I mean, he says he's a Trump supporter, so.
Well, my comment. Go ahead, Joe.
Nah, it's not important.
Okay. Well,
I didn't mean this about him specifically. I was thinking more broader, because there's all kinds of guys, right? I would not put Eye Patch McCain in this, because I've heard him say things that are based. I think he's lying through his teeth when he says a lot of the things that he says that purport to be conservative values, right? But the kind of things that kind of makes me think are these personal stories, right? Because the personal stories are essentially what bring us to politics. And like I said, I mean, the problem is the 15% that I disagree with somebody like him. It's enough to make me say that I would never buy his stuff. I would never support him personally, but that doesn't mean he might not have a point or two from time to time. And that's kind of all I'm saying.
But to circle back to the original story and issue, how do we expect an agency that's been known to hand guys bags of cash and say, go give this to some tribal elder, how can we expect them to pass an audit? And the other half of that is, what would happen if you failed your audit?
Exactly right. 100%. Joe, one of the things about that is that this is that just more government rules for thee and not for me, and it's rampant throughout the government, and I'm hoping that's one of the things that we see here in the the near future is people that'll change that. All right, let me go see if there's anything else I want to. Oh, this is rich. This is a quote from SecDef as well. He says, "We are determined to reach this milestone. I have zero tolerance for fraud, waste, and abuse in the Pentagon or elsewhere in the department." Huh.
Well, that's because he defines fraud, waste, and abuse as money not going to transgendering all of the troops and bringing more immigrants into the country and hunting down those rabid white supremacists that he's always banging on about.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on out there, isn't there? All right, gentlemen. That kind of wraps up the odds and ends for today. Joe, you want to talk a little bit about tactical-wisdom.com? You finished up with the class, and what's your next rendezvous with Destiny?
You know what? I'm going to defer to say when my next day with Destiny is. We may be completely changing things up and doing things completely different. But I did put out an article about it's the time of the year to swap out your bags and change things out. So check that out, and maybe take a look at your gear and make sure that you're ready to go for the winter season, putting in some heavier weight stuff, swapping out water and food, and be ready for all the fun weather that's coming your way. You should do that about every quarter anyway.
Yeah, that's a good point. I heard an interesting discussion at work, and they were talking about winter training, right? Winter, seasonal weather training, right? And the guy was saying, and this was a experienced NCO. He said, "Are we doing is this just about cold weather training, or is this for the driving, like driving in the winter? Because you have to have this training for driving in the winter." And then the other guy he was talking said, "No, this is the annual cold weather training. It's because you're going to be training in the cold, and you have to know what's going on with with the weather." And he was like, "But it doesn't change like from year to year, does it?" And I was like, everybody gets it for the first time sometime, and then it just kind of every year you learn something new, right?
Based upon the way people drive the first time it snows, everyone needs it every single year. But there may be some of that coming next year if we're still doing training then or whatever. But I really would like to do some cold weather stuff. So
Yeah, I tell you, as a kid, I did some cold weather camping that made big impressions on me as a kid. But ultimately, it's
Hell yeah. Camp Klondike for adults. Hell yeah.
I don't know that I call it fun, but it definitely I found it very useful.
we actually have a group of Boy Scouts coming out to the camp next month for exactly that.
Oh, very cool, very cool. I'm sure they'll have a lot more snow than we had when at the winter training we did.
Let's not say any of that until I get back there. We don't want them to have any more snow until I get back there.
No jinxing Joe's drive. All right, moving on. All right, our first topic for today is we're going to be talking about Ukraine's long bombs. And so what do I mean by long bomb? Well, I mean, bombs is short of a missile, for the title, but ultimately, Biden has basically decided to shake shit up with Ukraine before Trump gets into office.
I would like to
move
submit
straight out.
for the record. Oh,
Well,
sorry.
go ahead.
I'd like to submit for the record that I thought Ukraine's long shot was a better double entendre. But
Fair. I just think this whole thing has turned out to be a big bomb, so that was my thought. In a
nice.
move straight out of Louis after me, the flooding, the 15th, the outgoing Biden administration, in a seemingly desperate move to destabilize the global geopolitical picture, has authorized the lifting of some restrictions on Ukraine's use of Western-made weapons to strike military targets inside Russia, according to the reports from Bloomberg and the AP. The decision was reportedly shaped by North Korea ramping up support for President Vladimir Putin's army and an increase in Russian missile and drone attacks on its neighbor. The approval represents a major policy shift and comes as the deep state supported dementia-ridden puppet Joe Biden, I probably shouldn't say that, is about to leave office, and incoming President-elect Donald Trump has said he would bring about a swift end to the war. One of the interesting statements I saw, I'm just going to scan here. Yeah, I don't see it in here. So Putin has basically said, listen, if NATO weapons could be used to strike Russia, then we are literally at war with NATO. And I think this is kind of, Joe, from the beginning, we've warned about this, right? Is that if you give high-end weapons to Ukraine and just let them use them however they want, that ultimately Russia's not going to see a difference between Ukraine and NATO.
Well, the fact that they all made the decision on the same day tells you that there are bigger hands at play here. And I think that this authorization has way more to do with Donald Trump than it does with Vladimir Putin.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that, as we have pointed out many times, they're willing to burn it all down on the way out. And they're going to say, look, Trump comes into office and World War III starts. So just putting that one out there.
Yeah, it's Trump's fault, right? And the whole world explodes as soon as Trump gets involved. Well, it couldn't have anything to do with what happened for the last 4 years before it, could it? If approved, the capability would likely be the first used in the Kursk region of Russia, where Ukraine is fighting against North Korean troops as well as Moscow's forces. The people said, still, any permission, if granted, is unlikely to go as far as Ukraine has requested, one of the people said. As the war in Ukraine heads to, I don't care about that part. Let's see. Basically, the people that are pulling the strings on the war are urgently seeking to escalate the war in Ukraine to make the quick ceasefire sought by Trump impossible. After all, war is how the deep state earns its income, and in doing so, risks World War III. As just 2 months ago, Putin warned that if Ukraine uses long-range missiles to strike Russia, the United States is at war with Russia. And to underscore that mushroom clouds are coming, Putin since has said that Russia will use nuclear weapons if a mass enemy missile or UAV is launched towards Russia, or these weapons cross into Russian territory. Interesting. I mean, guys, what do you think about
Well,
Putin's use of this kind of language?
there's a community note here that's well noted. This is from September. This is not a direct response. However, we've been talking about doing this for a long time, so it kind of is. It's just that the decision has been delayed.
Right. This is when the decision was pending. Is when he made the shoot. Let's go ahead and play this video. This is an RT English broadcast, I think. So keep in mind it's RT, so all caveats to the reliability of RT for sure.
That Ukraine can plan, launch, and use these
version of the document, aggression against Russia by any non-nuclear state, but with the support of a nuclear state, is proposed to be considered as their joint attack on Russia. Russia will also consider the possibility of using nuclear weapons when receiving reliable information about a massive launch of means of aerospace attack and their crossing of our state border. This includes strategic and tactical aircraft, as well as cruise missiles and drones, hypersonic and other delivery vehicles. Russia reserves the right to use nuclear weapons in case of aggression, including if the enemy using conventional weapons poses a critical threat.
It is important to note at this point that these are at this time proposals to amend Russia's nuclear weapons use doctrine. We heard from Vladimir Putin multiple scenarios in which the rules and regulations governing how Russia can use its nuclear weapons will change. The first scenario is if a non-nuclear power attacks Russia with conventional arms but poses a grave or critical threat to Russia's sovereignty, the Russian leadership will be able to use nuclear weapons to neutralize that threat. The second scenario and how things will change is if that non-nuclear power that is attacking Russia is aided, supplied, abetted by a nuclear power, then that nuclear power will be considered a party to this conflict. So a joint attack on Russia, which will mean Russia will be able to use nuclear weapons both on the non-nuclear power and the nuclear power that it'll consider attacking it. Also, Russia will be able to use, preemptively perhaps use nuclear weapons if there is verified information, proof that there is an ongoing attack on Russia using aerospace assets, or, for example, a mass launch of drones. Again, I must mention that these are, at this time, are proposals on how Russia's first use of nuclear weapons, its nuclear doctrine, will change. Nevertheless, this is a stark warning to the West, the latest in a slew of such. Previously, Vladimir Putin had come out and said that if advanced Western missiles with great ranges are supplied to Ukraine and used against Russia for strikes deep into Russian territory, then those countries, the United States perhaps, or Great Britain or France, which supply Ukraine with extended range missiles, that they will be complicit in an attack on Russia. Russia has brushed off their arguments that they merely hand these weapons over. Russia says it has evidence, and there is no way that Ukraine can plan, launch, and use these weapons without without NATO troops being involved, without NATO technical staff being involved.
Watcher. What's going on with this guy's accent?
Which one? He's got 3.
It just sounds like he's been beaten the head too many times. The way he kind of slurs his speech a little bit. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Reminds me of a guy I know whose accent changes all the time. But anyway, I think that they're making a stretch there. The official Russian statement was not that they would use nuclear weapons, it's that they would consider it, as would we, if somebody launched a massive missile attack on us. So I do think, though, that we are crossing a gigantic red line and putting ourselves at risk of a massive conventional war that's not just contained to Europe, but is pretty much throughout the world. So we have to be very careful here.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the problem is, Joe, that any of these responses wouldn't be nice and clean and antiseptic, right? I mean, they would be messy, dirty, and cause a lot of problems. All right. Let's move on, shall we? So this is the interesting thing for me, right? Is we talk about the whole idea that Trump has said he wants to stop the war, and we all think that's a good idea because less war is better, right? The problem is, guys, is how do we avoid the Black Rocks, the State Streets, the JP Morgans, and all these huge finance kind of companies? How do we prevent them from absolutely making a killing off of the reconstruction of Ukraine? I mean, I just don't know what the answer is there because I think that's what they wanted all along. The war is just a kind of a stepping stone to get what they really want, which is the $2 trillion recovery operation that's going to occur. I mean, what's your thinking on this, guys?
Wait, contractors profiting on both the war and the ending of the war? Say it isn't so. That's never happened before.
I know, right? But the sad thing is they're going to make more money though on the peace, or maybe I should say the armistice, than they will the actual war part. I mean, because the money's going to. Oh, I'm sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
No, I just was agreeing with you.
Yeah, the money's going to come in from all over Europe, right? I mean, it's literally $2 trillion, and they're going to be able to whack that up. I mean, sure, most of that money is going to end up in concrete and paved roads and new buildings and new bridges and all this kind of stuff. But a lot of it's going to get washed, right? It'll get washed and it'll come out the other side clean as a whistle and go into some corporate account somewhere.
No, it isn't. I was going to say most of that.
Most of the money, what? Yeah, I think we lost him there for a second. All right. Let me get into this story here. Who really profits from the Ukraine war? And so this is something that Stan kind of opened our eyes to. I mean, I don't know that he opened our eyes, but he definitely made this point very vociferously last year on numerous occasions. It says here, few people understand that the war in Ukraine means for big business, namely opportunity. It's not just for the weapons and reconstruction contracts. Ukraine's vast agricultural lands, amongst the most fertile in the world, are up for grabs, and American companies like BlackRock are at the front of the line. RFK Jr. definitely and clearly explains. Let's see, JP Morgan and BlackRock, from financiers of destruction to half trillion dollar heroes of reconstruction, the hypocrisy of reconstruction of Ukraine by the same corporations that profited from the war. Let's see, let's play a little bit of the beginning of this video here, Watcher. It's about 4 minutes long, so I don't want to listen to the whole thing, but let's give the first minute or so a listen.
This is a war that should have never happened. It's a war that Russians tried repeatedly to settle on terms that were very, very beneficial to Ukraine and us. The major thing they wanted was for us to keep NATO out of the Ukraine. The big military contractors want to add new countries to NATO all the time. Why? Because then that country has to conform its military purchases to NATO weapon specifications, which means certain companies, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Boeing, and Lockheed, get a trapped market. In March of 2022, we committed $113 billion. Just to give you an example, we could have built a home for almost every homeless person in this country. We then committed another $24 billion since then, 2 months ago, and now President Biden's asking for another $60 billion. But the big expenses are going to come after the war. when we have to rebuild all the things that we destroyed. Mitch McConnell was asked, can we really afford to spend $113 billion to Ukraine? He said, don't worry. It's not really going to Ukraine.
It's going to American defense manufacturers.
So he just admitted it's a money laundering scheme. And who do you think owns every one of those companies? BlackRock. So Tim Scott, during the Republican debate, said, don't worry, it's not a gift to Ukraine, it's a loan. So raise your hand if you think that that loan's ever getting paid back. Yeah, of course it's not. So why do they call it a loan? Because if they call it a loan, they can impose loan conditions. And what are the loan conditions that we impose on? Number one, an extreme austerity program, so that if you're poor in Ukraine, you're going to be poor forever. Number two, most important, Ukraine has to put all of its government-owned assets up for sale to multinational corporations, including all of its agricultural land, the biggest single asset in Europe. In Ukraine, there's been 1,000 years of war fought over that land. It's the richest farmland in the world. It's the breadbasket of Europe. 500,000 kids almost, Ukrainians, have died to keep that land as part of Ukraine. They almost certainly didn't know about this loan condition. They've already sold 30% of it. The buyers were DuPont, Cargill, and Monsanto. Who do you think owns all of those companies? Yeah, BlackRock. And then in December, President Biden gave out the contract to rebuild Ukraine. And who do you think got that contract? BlackRock. So they're doing this right in front of us. They don't even care that we know anymore, because they know that they can get away with it. And how do they know that? Because they have a strategy. And that strategy is an old strategy, which is they keep us at war with each other. They keep us hating on each other. They keep the Republicans and Democrats fighting each other, black against white, and all these divisions that they sow.
All right. So I mean, that was a little more than I expected, but I mean, Watcher, did you hear anything in there that you really disagree with?
No, it's mostly stuff that I've been preaching myself for quite a long time. Once you see the inside of the machine, it's hard not to see it. And unfortunately, that while I don't always agree in such things, I think in this case, the purpose of a machine is what it does.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. The irony is that we, for the longest time, people worried about the military industrial complex, right? But in reality, it's not the military industrial complex, it's the finance industrial complex, right? Because
Correct.
all of like the Lockheeds, the Boeings, all these companies are having these huge sections of their stock that are owned by BlackRock, State Street. There's a couple other of these private equity firms,
And the best part of BlackRock and various others is they're not playing with their own money. They're playing with your money. They're playing with your boomer family members' pension funds. They're playing with firefighters and public officials and public union members' pension funds. That's where their money comes from in large part.
Yeah.
And they get it all at 0% interest government loans. It's they are a species of parasite that could not exist without the unbelievable level of corruption already found within our government. And so I look hopefully, but not confidently, towards efforts like Doge to help strike these agencies down, but not directly, just by, shall we say, limiting their ability to feed and thereby starving the beast.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it's ultimately these vehicles, right? This like the recovery effort in it's a way to get massive spending for something that is emotionally satisfying for most of the electorate, right? Like the Democrats probably, I would go so far as to say that 80 to 90% of Democratic voters would absolutely be in favor for us rebuilding Ukraine. And let's be honest, probably 30 to 40% of Republican voters, if explained in a one-sided manner, would say, yeah, we should help them. I mean, it's the right thing to do. Yeah, Russia's the bad guys. When these are designed to ultimately be money laundering operations.
Absolutely factual. I before we move on though, I just have to say it is phenomenal that isn't it BlackRock who's literally managed like the ultimate head guy? Their last name is Fink. Sometimes the universe it writes itself. It's amazing.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Let's move on down. Let me kind of go down into this. JP Morgan and BlackRock, along with the consultancy McKinsey and Company, are collaborating with the Ukrainian government to establish a reconstruction fund. The objective of this fund is to attract significant investments for the country's reconstruction, which could cost between $400 billion and $1 trillion. The estimate that Stan had heard was $2 trillion. So I bet that one is probably closer to reality, honestly. This fund, known as the Fund for the Development of Ukraine, will use a blended finance approach to mobilize both public and private capital, targeting priority sectors such as infrastructure, climate, and agriculture. BlackRock and JP Morgan offered their services pro bono to manage this fund. Well, isn't that nice? Leveraging their expertise in financial markets and debt management. The intention of this fund could begin to operate fully once the war ends, although planning is already underway. I bet it is, and has been discussed in recent international conferences. The United States, through its
I'd like
policies, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I'd like to point out that what planning has already begun means is, have you ever gone into the butcher shop and you see how they have that diagram of the cow where they have all the various different parts allotted and cut out and ready to go? They've essentially, what they mean by planning has already begun is that they've drawn up their plan. They know who gets what cut.
Yeah. It's absolutely they're basically they're divvying up the sectors of the country and the parts and all this kind of stuff, and they're making contingency plans. Well, what happens if Russia controls this much, or what if they control that much, or
and let's be very honest about what it is that they are dividing. They are dividing Europe's most productive farmland, and I know that was partially gone through here, but I want you guys to remember, hey, what happened in all other parts of the world, particularly Northern Africa, when the war started and they weren't able to get the grain that is providing stability to dozens of nations?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is just Ukraine, right? I mean, this isn't everything else.
Of course. Yeah, no, we're not. No, yeah, no. No knock-on effects here. Nobody vying for global power and domination via control of the farmlands. No, definitely not.
By the way, didn't you just post something in the private chat about this undersea cable?
I did. Would you like that link?
I mean, I just, if there's a little blurb about it.
It's a zero hedge.
Okay, yeah. Let's see what it says.
Okay, I'll pull it up here in a minute. You go ahead and finish this, and then I'll have it ready by then.
All right. Let's see. The United States, through its foreign policies and interventions, has a long history of fomenting instability in various regions of the world. In the case of Ukraine, the situation is no different. From the beginning Ukraine crisis, the American interests were clear: to weaken Russia and expand the Western sphere of influence. And to do that, they created the Maidan uprising. Orchestrated by Victoria Nuland. JP Morgan and BlackRock are entities deeply rooted in the global financial system, and both have a history of financing military industries, governments that perpetuate conflict. The dichotomy is alarming. The same institutions that finance destruction now are celebrated as the leaders of reconstruction. The irony. McKinsey's lack of transparency and controversial practices call into question the integrity and entire reconstruction process. So basically, this guy is saying not only are these people completely corrupt, but they've got a history of obfuscating what's going on with a lot of these type of deals. You'll never really get to see what the hell's going on.
Oh yeah, if you look at America's worst, most egregious violations of basically every natural law, every bit of decency that's possible, all of the hey, let's partner up with child molesting tribals and that kind of shit. The McKinsey Institute stands firmly behind all of those decisions and has their name on the recommending documentation.
All right. So let's see this. Not this one. Show me the one about the
Right. Yeah. Here you go.
I'm looking it up for myself here. So
yes, a mysterious fault has now stricken a undersea cable in the Baltic Sea, which connects Finland and Germany. Notice anything interesting that it might pass by on its way from Finland to Germany?
Due to the fault, the services provided over the Sea Lion 1 cable are down. The cause of the fault is being investigated. We had that Chinese ship that basically drug its anchor and snapped a line not too long ago. I think that was between like Norway and the UK or something like that. This is an undersea fiber optic cable between Rostock, Germany, and Helsinki, Finland, connecting businesses in Central Europe with data centers in Northern Europe. It was constructed in early 2016, has a total capacity of 144 terabytes per second. That's a lot of data. China did not provide further details about the cause of the fault of Sea Lion 1 or if there were any. I'm sorry, not China. Sienna. That's, I guess, the company that it's CINIA. My brain saw that and it was like China.
Yep. I'm with you.
Yeah, the Finnish networking company is called Cinia. So that's what that is. Where is that from? Let's see. One ex-user speculated potential cause. A crude oil tanker, Magic Lady, on its way from St. Petersburg to Dakar, which behaved strangely. Yeah, that's it. Kind of interesting, that track there where they did basically like a curly
that
cue.
Almost looks like the exact maneuver you would pull if you were to say, drop your anchor and then drag it across to a known fiber optic cable path. Weird.
Yeah.
Let me figure out where the Magic Lady is registered to. Hold on a second.
Well, they're not even making it difficult. If this is true, I assume it's true. I have no reason not to believe it's true. This is nuts. All right.
Here we have the Magic Lady and her current whereabouts. Let's see. She's headed to Dakar at the moment. She's still in transit. Hold on. This site's not going to tell me who owns her. But I can tell you that she makes a lot of stops in Turkey.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. All right, let's jump back into the story we were going to be doing next, because this is connected in a vague way to the AFD stuff. Because it's the stuff that Schultz is doing that has basically put him in the position he is with that party. Putin made a
no. Hold on. This is important.
Yes.
Magic Lady, former vessel name Yongxing Shanhang or Super Lotus.
Well, who's it owned by now?
It's flagged under Barbados. Let's see. Fist Management Limited. We will look into that.
All right. Putin made a pass at Schultz by suggesting that the last undamaged part of Nord Stream pipelines could swiftly be put back to use if Germany helps Russia in Ukraine by rejecting Trump's reported plans to escalate to de-escalate. The first Putin-Schultz call in 2 years diplomatically opened Pandora's box, according to Zelensky, and broke ice with the West, in the New York Times words, both of which are accurate assessments, but they and almost everyone else missed the most important part. Putin told Schultz that Russia had always honored its commitments under various treaties and contracts in the energy sector and was willing to promote mutually beneficial cooperation if the German side showed interest in it. This follows the Russian leader saying during a news conference after last month's BRICS summit that there is still a functional pipeline in the Baltic Sea. It's part of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. All the German authorities have to do is just press a button to resume supplies, but they are not doing this for political reasons. Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
Update on tanker ownership. It's Saudi.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is probably a neutral item there, I would say. Oh, excuse me. All right. Euronews reported that, or in early October, that Germany's economic woes are continuing, with the country now facing the specter of closing 2024 in recession, which all objective observers know is the direct result of the Germany abandoning its decades-long policy of importing cheap energy from Russia. It now purchases much more expensive LNG from the U.S., which in turn raises costs across the board, thus hamstringing its economic competitiveness that was responsible for prior eras of growth. Seeing as how Trump is expected to escalate to de-escalate in order to end the proxy war on better terms for the U.S., which is explained in another story. While the obstacles therefore were listed, here Putin must convince Schultz to impede these plans and propose a reviving spring 2022 draft treaty instead. That's interesting, right? You remember that original treaty that they were sitting down up in, what is it, Belarus, right? They were meeting up in Belarus. And apparently they were relatively close to like a draft agreement, and Zelensky just turned the whole thing off once he found out he was going to be getting NATO money. It's almost like that's not good faith, Watcher. What do you think?
Well, gee, Europeans not operating with each other in good faith? Oh, weird. No, I mean, none of this has been a show of good faith. It's all very. Look, there's an elephant in the room in this conversation that I can't believe nobody in this is talking about. We're talking about the Nord Stream 2. Why are we not talking about that we know who blew up the Nord Stream and that nobody's going to act on that, even though they are going to act on it in the background, right? I mean, one day these things will become public, but anyhow. Germany's economic woes are also self-caused. In a way,
much of it's self-inflicted.
It's insane that we would try and like the plans for an LNG port to try and save Germany from them falling to Russian propaganda against their own nuclear industry and then cutting out all of their nuclear power when France is unaffected by same, and then instead letting them rely on Russian petroleum and natural gas, and now we want to send our liquefied natural gas like Rube Goldbergian doesn't even begin to describe the crazy ass plans that we're trying to do to fix something that honestly it doesn't need fixing. Russia and Germany should probably just be friends, considering that. Well, I mean, the current Russian or the current German government must and the way that they operate must give some of those people who are still in Russia craving the old Soviet Union pleasant flashbacks.
Let's see. The clock is ticking for Russia to achieve maximum goals in the Ukrainian conflict before Trump might escalate to de-escalate. Hence the urgency with which Putin made his pass at Schultz. Yeah, this doesn't surprise me, right? Like, I think, let's be honest, I think Ukraine and Russia are both ready for this thing to end. They just got to figure out a way to save face in a way that allows them to stop fighting, but, try to claim some sort of victory, right? And I think if they're able to both kind of have victory on their side, then ultimately they would turn it off. But I feel like once Trump gets in, it's going to be kind of a fait accompli, and the end is nigh, if you will, much like the doomsayers.
Can I bring up an interesting thought here? They're bringing up over and over Trump's likelihood to escalate to de-escalate. I wonder, given Biden being all smiles and joy and saying that we're going to have the smoothest transition ever, if maybe this is part of that escalate to de-escalate. As stupid as it is, I doubt it, but it's worth bringing up, I think.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like it's hard to know exactly where it begins and where it ends, right? But at the same time, is it effective? And so I think the fact that you're seeing moves being made in anticipation of Trump's takeover of American foreign policy, ultimately that is that's kind of the driver of all this. And I think that's probably very valid. We've already seen a lot of moves by other countries, assuming that Trump will win the election, and now that he's won the election, he will put in a very Trump-like pro U.S. first MAGA style foreign policy team.
Well, and if I may bring our attention back to a certain Stan who was on fire. What peace can possibly be made at this point that makes the few Ukrainian men remaining, when they look back on this experience and see who was directly involved, funded, and profited off of every step of the process, including stripping away their land from Ukrainian people and divesting it to multinational corporations that hate them and specifically got them into a war and got them to kill each other. At what point, what sort of peace can we possibly make that's going to make them not hate us for eternity and use the unimaginable weapons stockpile which now exists in the Ukrainian black market in order to seek revenge against us and our interests?
Well, you're saying specifically Ukrainians with a axe to grind.
Correct. Yeah.
I don't think. I'll be honest with you.
That's the piece we need to be pushing for.
I don't think that'll be the case, right? I think if anything, what I think is likely to see happen is some sort of almost like a low-level insurgency behind Russian lines in the occupied former Ukrainian provinces. I think that's more likely.
Oh, yeah.
These
little blue men, as it were.
Well, yeah, these Ukrainians that are going to be left standing when the war's over aren't going to have any kind of real anger at Trump or America for stopping the war, how
about for starting it and stripping their land from them in the process?
They don't see it that way, though. You got to remember, they don't see that maybe, and even then, I don't think it'll be a majority of them, right? Because ultimately, you got to remember, right? They don't see America as they don't know who Victoria Nuland is, and if they ever become aware of her, she will be a person, not like the U.S. government, right? It's like if they've perceived Trump as doing right by them, oh, he helped in the war, it wasn't everything we wanted, but ultimately we're not dying anymore, so then now they're training our people and they're re-equipping us and they're helping rebuild our country.
The Russian government and RT certainly know who Victoria Nuland and all of those people are.
I
They're
agree.
about to have free reign and broadcast again.
I agree, but you got to remember, a guy who spent the last 3 years in the trenches getting blown up by the Russians for 3 years and then finally comes out the other side of it. He's not going to be like, give me that Victoria Nuland. He is absolutely focused on the Russians, 100%, because those are the people who were shooting at him every day. You know, I mean, so it's way more personal for people like that. So, you know, to the extent, you know, we don't have any real national interest in Ukraine. I've been arguing this from the beginning, and because of that, it's actually fairly easy for us to extricate ourselves from the situation. And because
actually, if I may, somebody in chat brought up an excellent point. You're saying they're going to try and lock out the Crimean ports as they were doing before the war, which was one of the key drivers for this war from the Russian standpoint. I disagree. I don't think Ukraine is going to be left with access to any of that particular waterway, except for possibly Odessa.
Well, here's the thing. They'll have the from the river, what is it? The Dnieper River. They'll own the coast over to Romania, right?
Yes.
And so, or Moldova rather. Is it Moldova? No. Moldova.
Yeah, no, you're correct, because it doesn't
Romania.
quite reach all the way down.
It's Romania.
Romania.
So they'll have that part of the coast, and then Russia will have Crimea over to Russia, right? You know, the Kursk or the Kark Strait and all that stuff. The Sea of Azov, they'll control all of that.
Yeah, Russia will no longer permit that to happen. That was one of the key points for starting the war in the first place.
Well, but the what was a bigger thing was the lack of access to water for Crimea, if you remember. You know, because where
they cut it off, and that's on that side of the bank.
Now, all the canals that led from the Dnieper River to Crimea were basically blocked by the Ukrainians and were dry. So anyway, I think there's going to be a lot of, you know, back and forth enmity between Russia and Ukraine, you know, focused at each other. That, you know, there will be people who are like, as a footnote, even though we've been fighting each other, you know, bloody, you know, the Americans were heavily involved in the beginning of this war. Okay. I mean, you know, ultimately they're not going to care about that. They're going to care about the fact that they wanted to be part of the EU, and Russia said that we couldn't do it. Yeah, Durna for $10 says, imagine you're drunk, your friend reminds you of some smack your cousin was talking and gets you into a fight. Who are you mad at when you sober up? The Ukrainians will blame us when it's all over. I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. I mean, let's be honest. You know, nobody sits there and says the Americans started the Vietnam War because of the Pueblo, or not the Pueblo, the Tonkin Bay incident, right? You know.
No, because it was proven to have been manufactured.
That's what I'm saying. My point is it was been proven to be manufactured, but nobody cares about that. That's a true fact that's fairly open, but nobody sits there. Like, Vietnam vets don't sit there and have an axe to grind against the U.S. government for starting a war
because they won.
Friends.
That's because they won.
I'm saying the U.S. vets who did not win don't have an axe to grind for the most part, even though that's a freely and open false flag operation that helped start the whole thing, right? You know, by all accounts, by the logic that, you know, people will hate Nuland, ergo the U.S., then that should immediately go back to Vietnam, and that all Vietnam vets should hate the U.S. government or blame the U.S. government significantly. Now, I have heard some Vietnam vets say that. So there will always be a group of people who do, but ultimately they point to communism, right? Well, the reason why we did that is because of communism, right? You know, it's like, well, the reason why, you know, Nuland did this, but she was trying to give us, you know, the EU and NATO, and that's what we wanted. So ultimately the Russians are the bad guys, right? I mean, that's the kind of I just don't want people to think that, there's going to be some sort of like, unburdening of the hatred between, we were Slavic brothers all along. It was those
Oh, no.
evil Americans that were. They're not gonna do it.
I don't think they're gonna unburden their hatred for
I
Russia.
love working the word unburdened into things nowadays.
It's good. Yeah. No, that's didn't even think about that, but yeah.
The sad thing is every time we use it, it's 100% better use than what she used. I like using words correctly, anyway, so let's move on with this. Well, that's pretty much the end of that story there. And that's the end of the topic of the Ukraine Russia stuff. I want to move on real quick to this idea. You're cracking me up with the title here, sending me notes in the titles. All right, segment 2, the Israel-Iran shakeup. Okay, so what's shaking up here? Well, reportedly, Iran publishes picture of Supreme Leader. This is the Times of Israel article. Iran publishes picture of Supreme Leader Khamenei after unsourced reports he was in a coma. Now, I heard this is like a X rumor, right? And you know how X rumors go. Let's 50% of the time they turn out not to be true. But then again, that makes X still more right than mainstream media usually is, especially when it comes to Trump. But so I was waiting to see some outlets pick this up, and sure enough, here like 12 hours later, I'm seeing major outlets, both Newsweek and a couple other U.S. outlets, and then this is the Times of Israel, and I also saw some other outlets from the Middle East. So there may be something to this, and if this is true, this could be a huge kind of reordering of the policy, because he's been one of the main kind of instruments of the guidance that the IRGC is getting in order to push their aims. Iran publishes a picture of the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei today after widespread unsourced reports in social media said that he was either in a coma or had died. The imaging shows him in his office talking to Iran ambassador to Lebanon, Mojtaba Amani, who was injured in. That's right. He's got a hand bandage because they blew a couple of his fingers off when he was holding on to his pager.
I'm sorry. Was this somehow like, was he holding up a? I don't think he's dead, but equally, publishing a photo of a guy that has no way of being able to tell when it was taken, not exactly proof of life.
Well, yeah. So let's see. So I just thought this was really interesting, because if this is, we could kind of speculate a little bit here. If this is true, then this is a pretty big story. Watcher, what's your kind of take on where this could potentially go?
Well, boy, if he's dead, that which I'm not saying he is, and I'm not saying he's not, but what we're speculating on here is how does that change things? And holy shit, the entire board just got rewritten. If the Ayatollah croaks anybody, like without the Israelis doing anything about it, he just is gone. There are a lot of things that change quite suddenly, because at very minimum, at the worst possible time for them, Iran's government is now in a state of flux.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. All right. So, one of the stories that I had heard kind of in connection to this was that Hamas or Hezbollah had been pressured by, Iran recently. And when I say recently, contemporaneous with potentially him being in a coma, to kind of wrap up their fight with Israel in southern Lebanon, and potentially even pull back all Hezbollah forces north of the Litani River, which is that kind of traditional area that was kind of the home of the Christian militias, and a lot of other more pro-Israeli groups were in that southern part, but most of them got pushed out in the 2006 war, and it's kind of like the activity that led to them getting pushed out is what triggered the 2006 war. Yeah, I think this is huge. I mean, I think it would be exciting. Whenever one of the enemies of our country dies, it's either great opportunities or great risk.
Well,
Uh,
again, though, I just want to stress that. Oh, in fact, somebody's figured out that these images can't be recent. They were released before in 2014. So again, I'm sorry, but it's very odd and worth noting that when asked to provide proof of life, they posted photos from 2014.
Yeah, right. I mean, so like these old photos that have nothing to do with reality. It's kind of, don't you remember when they killed the leader of Hezbollah? I've already brain dumped his name.
Which one?
Which one, right? They were saying he was alive, and ultimately, but there was no pictures, right? And so, in the age of the internet, it's pictures or it didn't happen, or pictures or he's not alive is essentially should be the anybody related to Israel potentially dropping a bomb on their head need to show off some pictures. All right, let's jump into this next story. This is interesting. Speaking of people who might have an Israeli bomb dropped on their head, Hezbollah media relations chief assassinated by Israel in heart of Beirut. By the way, the fact that they use the word assassinated makes me kind of just question the veracity of this, of this outlet. But I felt like it was worth, kind of going into the lion's den.
Are you accusing the cradle of being childish?
Well, I mean,
I couldn't help myself. I'm sorry.
Of being a leftist mouthpiece is what I'm saying. Let's read this biased account and see what else they say. The head of Hezbollah's media relations department, Mohammed Afif, was assassinated in a violent, assassinated and violent to describe this, right? It's an airstrike. Of course it's violent. He was killed, right? He was targeted by an Israeli airstrike, which would be a more even way to present that. Israeli airstrike on a building in the heart of Beirut on 17 November. Fate willed that Haj Mohammed Afif was inside the building at the same time of the attack, said the Secretary General of Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party. Interesting, Socialist Ba'ath Party. Harkens back to, I guess they have those in Syria and in Iraq. He said Afif was holding a meeting in the Ba'ath Party headquarters at the time of, maybe this is a bomb that we dropped like 20 years ago and just finally hit the ground.
Yeah, hold on.
This is Ba'ath-seeking missile.
The existence of a violent assassination implies the existence of a non-violent assassination, and I really want to see what that looks like.
Exactly right. Well, I would say that the violent was referring directly to the bombing. It was a violent airstrike. I mean, like I said, opposed to non-violent airstrikes. Okay, I mean,
well, okay.
I guess you could drop.
We do candy bombing.
I was gonna say you could drop 10,000 Nerf darts on somebody. That would be fair.
I need to see that marked up with AI now.
All right. The Lebanese resistance movement has yet to release a statement. Israel has heavily, the guy who would release the statement was blown up. So yeah, of course you're not gonna, when their PAO gets blown up, yes, shockingly they don't have they're like, how do you write a press release again? Let's see. Israel tried to assassinate Afif on 3 October when it targeted the building of Hezbollah's media relations office in the southern suburb of Beirut. It targeted the site where Afif was giving a speech in a suburb. His speech on 22 October, Afif publicly announcing Hezbollah's responsibility for a drone attack, which exploded in the bedroom window of Benjamin Netanyahu's home in the Caesarea. To the Israeli enemy, we say this is just him saying something, but he's dead, so it doesn't matter what he said. So yeah, they've blown up another terrorist. Good news. Good news.
I have something very strange to report.
Yes.
It appears that in trying to unpussify Grok and make it so that it would generate images of weapons, it also makes it in some way so that it will not generate image, like take something that should be a weapon and then turn it into something else. It just stays as a missile. That's interesting.
Interesting. All right. So evidently, let's see, we got a little BDA on that the October strike that Israel did on Iran. I guess it says here, Iranian nuclear facility destroyed in October Israeli strike. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Israel's airstrike on Iran last month has reportedly destroyed a top secret, I guess it wasn't that secret, Iranian nuclear research facility at Parchin, which lies 19 miles southeast of the country's capital, Tehran, according to multiple sources within the U.S. and Israeli intelligence. August 25 strike that targeted the Talagan 2 facility, Axios reported. It is a site previously thought to be inactive, but which had been revived for use in the secret nuclear weapons research. If confirmed, the attack marks a sharp escalation in Israel's ongoing campaign against Iran's nuclear program. The officials describing the facility as a key node in Iran's effort to develop technology needed for nuclear weaponization. It says here, it says Iran should not respond to Israel's retaliation if it chooses to do. This is what a State Department spokesperson said. If it chooses to do so, we will support Israel in defending itself. The United States, no kidding, we've got a THAAD battery on the ground of it. You don't think people know that we're going to help defend them? Let's see. The United States' message for Iran is clear. Should it choose to undertake further attacks against Israel or the U.S. personnel in the region, there will be consequences. Well, alrighty then. Watcher. I mean,
as the internet likes to say, consequences will never be the same. Yeah, look, so what I'm hearing from chat, and as I'm trying to look into this in other sources, is that apparently this facility was so top secret that many top level Iranian people didn't know that it existed. So there wasn't a lot of outrage because a lot of the people who did know it existed are extant.
Yeah, well, I mean, so the interesting thing about the Israeli airstrikes, and I think this is just a good example, right? If a country were to blow up something in the middle of Area 51, people in Las Vegas would have no idea, right? Only later when it gets reported, right, that okay, that happened. But ultimately, what's the impact to me? No impact? All right, whatever. I'll just keep on going with my life. A lot of these facilities that were bombed are either facilities that don't have a larger, wider impact on the society of Iran as a whole, or they were, say, part of the integrated air defense network. And that is the kind of thing that ultimately, it basically, it doesn't have any civilian ties, right? Unless there's an apartment building right next to where one of these S-300 systems were set up. People just aren't going to know about
them. I just want to point out that this is a weird truth about our show. You're absolutely correct. And so here's the thing: it's a research facility, which great. Nobody has yet said anything about, say, hitting the facility where all the centrifuges are that are currently enriching uranium enough to be weapons grade. That's really the actual hinge point of all this, right? And the rest of it's all just games.
Yeah. Yep, I think that's all accurate. Right.
Speaking of games and accuracy,
well, we're not the only people who have a bunch of knuckleheads protesting. The irony is that when you protest like this, and like this is the kind of thing that, okay, so if I said protesters in Seattle fires flare towards, mayor's house, ignites fire near the mayor's residence, and 3 suspects are arrested. If I said that, people are like, what? So what? A regular Saturday night in Seattle, right?
I was going to say no one would cover it. The journalist, your editor at the paper would say, "Man or dog bites man." Who cares?
Yeah, right. But here, shocking video shows flares fired towards Netanyahu's home, igniting fire near Israeli Prime Minister's residence as 3 suspects arrested. Now, in the Israeli state, during a war, if you do this, all of a sudden you stop being a protester and you start becoming an enemy combatant, or potentially an insurrectionist or a seditionist, right? And potentially even a traitor. Several people fired flares at the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's private home Sunday morning, igniting a fire next to it. Shocking video of the incident shows. So, can you got the video? I think it's got to be in that video up front.
Maybe it's part of this 3-minute that's up here. Yeah.
Yeah, you can just play the. You don't have to turn the sound on. Let's see here. 3-piece. Let's see. Shocking video shows the incident. The moment the 2 flares are fired at the house, landing in the yard and starting a fire beside a central air unit. 3 people were arrested in the incident, which occurred when the PM and his family were not at home. It should not be possible for the Prime Minister of Israel, who is threatened by Iran and its proxies, who are trying to assassinate him, to be subject to the same kind of threats from a home. That's the newly appointed Defense Minister, Israel Katz, said. Police noted there were no damage to the house as a result of fires. Officials have not immediately named the suspects who were arrested. The Israeli police, major crimes unit, and Shin Bet intelligence say they are investigating the incident and are slammed as a dangerous escalation of protests that are targeting the embattled Prime Minister of Israel. You know what's funny is that the Israelis are very decent people, right? I would be surprised if they actually threw the book at these people, unless there is some kind of connection to terrorist activity or whatever. If they're just,
No, I don't know, man. This comes after Iran sent a drone and detonated it against his bathroom window.
Well,
that was like less than a month ago.
Remember, I'm not saying that they should or shouldn't do it. I think they probably should throw the book at these people. But I just get the
that's
feeling
what I'm
that
saying is
Israel might not.
They might not, but it is very easy at this point to say, hey, you're acting in concert with the enemy during a time of war. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know the Israeli justice system, but I could say basically anywhere else.
It goes to that intent type thing, and like I said, they may be able to feel like they're in a position with their domestic protesting audience that maybe we catch more bees with honey than vinegar. And so, it'll be interesting to see which way this goes. I think they should be put in Gitmo myself, as they're obviously terrorists. Gentlemen, that's all I got. There's no real gentlemen. It's just me and you, Watcher, today. Appreciate you hanging in here with me.
Yeah, of course.
Final thoughts as we go into the week?
Yeah. I saw a meme in our chat earlier that I wish I'd have grabbed out because it's going to be a long way up there before, but it said something like dance like no one's watching, some other platitude that I don't remember. Make friends like we're about to live through a giant geopolitical disaster that will mean you'll have to depend on your friends and neighbors for food. Here it is. Here it is. Here we go.
Go
I'll
ahead.
share it directly from the chat so as to. Oh shoot! There we go. Bam. Come on.
Dance like
Hey,
no one's
why isn't it
watching.
doing
Love like you never been hurt. Make friends.
Scott, you might have to press share my screen because it's not doing it.
I can see it. It's on here. Make friends like there will be supply chain or social infrastructure collapse, and you will have to rely on each other for basic survival. That's funny. Random PNW guy 84 for $10 over in the Rumble chat says the irony there was vandalism at home of the president of the University of Washington, Seattle on Saturday night. You're not reporting it because yes, it was just another Saturday night. Exactly right. Is this the reason why, like, when 30 kids get killed or 30 gangbangers get killed in Chicago, nobody cares?
Yeah. In fact, in case you guys aren't aware, like what I said earlier, the whole man bites dog versus dog bites man thing is literally a test that most editors will go through before they allow you to spend your time reporting a story. And if it is too commonplace and the thing that just happens all the time, your editor will turn to you and literally say, dog bites man, no one cares.
Yeah, fair enough. Watcher, that's all I got. It's a good day, good Monday. End of the Monday for me, beginning of the Monday for you guys. Chat, you guys were holding it down. Yeah, Rumble chat, I'm here to tell you, you guys were a little dead there for a while. You did come back to life. That Jay Clark was in response to it was in response to me saying that in the chat. So you guys kind of picked it up there at the end. So very good. Guys, I've got I've got a regular week ahead. Assuming that we don't have any crazy political moves between now and Wednesday, we will probably try to do another more focused on foreign events. I want to try to get back to the domestic Friday thing until probably after the inauguration. At least, and then maybe we'll just focus on defense Fridays or something like that.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Well, it depends on how things sort out because it could be that that becomes the front line of conflict. Oh, there we go. Wow, member for 31 months.
Yeah, not Alan Rogers, member for 31. I'll manage to catch you all live again one day. Hope all is well. Yeah, hope all is well with you too, brother. And like I said, if you are like these gentlemen who want to support us via Super Chat, that's definitely one of the things that you can do. Another way to do it is through memberships, the channel memberships. We do it on both YouTube and on Rumble. If you ask me which one to do, I would say do it on Rumble. Because more of your money comes to us. If you do a $5 membership on YouTube, the downside is like, on a good day, we'll get $4 of that, 4 of that 5. But Rumble, we get a bigger piece. So, all right, guys, that's all I've got for today. I appreciate you being here in the chat. Watcher, thank you. If you haven't done already, please subscribe to the channels, either on YouTube or Rumble. Like the video, hit the bell for notifications, share the link out there with your friends. Let them know you're getting some good info here on the Council on Future Conflicts. And make sure you're all, being good to each other. And as always, stay safe.